Hello and welcome in, everybody. I'm so glad you are here. My name is Deborah Jeffries, and this is HR Answers Lunch Bunch. And we're having a topic with Miss Danielle called Wellness That Works. I will do a very informal introduction. Miss Danielle, you take the specifics, but Danielle and I had a chance to connect. I don't know, maybe it's been just over a year ago, and I am fascinated by this woman, and I'm just gonna call it like it is. She is a very calming influence. She's insightful, and she makes me think, and I love that. And when it comes to thinking about things a little bit more holistically, when it comes to improving oneself and thinking about oneself differently, and that on behalf of organizations and going in and working with organizations that want to do better on behalf of employees, then we're in the right space with the right individual and her organization. And so we talked months and months ago, like at the beginning of the year. So this has been in the works for quite some time to have her join me for Lunch Bunch and being able to have a conversation, a meaningful conversation and discussion with you. So while I know Danielle has slides, she wants to make it interactive. And let's talk about wellness that works for individuals and within organizations. And you guys are all here. And please know, this is a discussion. You can ask questions of Miss Danielle. You can put things in the chat box, and I will help monitor that so that she doesn't miss anything. The recording is on, so that means we'll be able to revisit it later, and people who miss. And I believe that we can also share the slides with you after the program is over so that you can have that as well. So please don't worry about quote, taking pictures or scribbling a bunch of notes unless there are things there that are meaningful that you want to take back. But this also means that you can share with staff at a later date. Miss Danielle, I'm so happy that you're here. The floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Deborah. This has been in the works for a little while, and I am just beyond thrilled to be with you today. I am so excited to hear just a little bit about who's in the room. So if you would find your chat and share with me, what are you doing in the world? Maybe share what industry you're in, and maybe what your role is. I would love to know, do we have business owners in the room? Do we have HR managers in the room? Who's here? A lot of what I'm going to explore with you today is this idea of workplace wellness, employee wellness, really through the lens of smaller organizations. I know that HR Answers particularly works with businesses, small to mid-sized businesses. So I assume that's who we have here. That's the space that I play in. So I'm excited to hear, how many people are in the organization that you work in. So hang out with me in the chat for a second. And while you do that, I want to just share really briefly what my hope is for today. My hope today is to share some information, some perspective. I do like to make people think, like Deborah said, and I am thrilled to bring the topic of wellness into the workplace. That is my purpose right now, and it's got me fired up. So I have some really important news to share with you, some evidence-based, research-based things to share. So you are going to hear me kind of just give you the information for a good solid, 10 to 15 minutes. And then from there, I want us to spend some time in discussion. So I hope you have something to write with. If you don't, go grab something. As we go through some information together, I want you to write down a question that comes to your mind, a story that you have that relates to something that I share, or an idea that you want to add to our discussion, because I do think I have some things to teach you today, but I know that you have some things to teach me and for us to learn together. So grab something to write with. I'm going to look at our responses here. We do have some HR coordinators. We have business managers, 22 employees, 20. Oh, all different kinds of, okay, here's 80. Yep. Fantastic. Okay, thank you. That's just really helpful for me to, know who I'm talking with.
Yeah, you have up from 20 to 600. Lauren has 600 employees. So, just a small range.
And it's so different, right? There's so much nuance. So I do hope that you will grab that piece of paper to write on or a note on your phone, that as I share some information, as you put it through your lens, your experience, how these things apply to you in your organization, in your role, I want to hear from you, because there's going to be some nuance there, and I do want to explore that together. So before we launch in, I do want to share just a tiny bit about myself and a little bit of my context, my story. I am the co-founder and CEO of an organization called Advanced Corporate Wellness. You can check us out at acwcoaching.com. I've been in the health and wellness space for about 6 years now. And my husband and I started this company of ours a few years ago from our own experience, from our own story, right? Like many things start, it comes from our lived experience that we then saw a need and we saw a space that we could make a difference. So and maybe you'll relate to this story, but it really comes from a place of, watching my husband's career develop. He got into management really young, really early, and he deserved it. He is an intelligent guy. He's socially intelligent, emotionally intelligent, and very skilled in the accounting and management side of the business. But again and again, year after year, job after job, we noticed him hitting a wall that we have now lovingly called the burnout wall. Maybe you're familiar with it. Yeah. So when we saw this happen, it was like we got presented with this crossroads over and over again, where he had to decide and choose between himself, his health, his well-being, or his job, his livelihood, his means of supporting his family. And we were both, over this decade of experience, became morally opposed to this conundrum. And I do think that too many of us find ourselves in this position. So this is the problem that we have set out to have one small way of solving. And that is, in our company, we provide a unique employee wellness program where we partner with small businesses and we provide any employee that wants one their own personal health and wellness coach. And we're going to dive in more of like big picture today of why that should even be a thing. I want to zoom out and talk with you about wellness programs in general. But just so that you know the space that I'm coming from and the space that I play in, I wanted to share that story with you. And if anybody resonates with that, go ahead and drop that in the chat or jot something down that you want to share from what has it been like for you to hit that burnout wall. And again, we're going to have kind of some information here for about the next 15 minutes or so. And then I really want to spend some time in discussion and in community with all of you. So let's get to the big question. This I want you to use as a bit of a pulse survey for yourself and for the organization that you're a part of right now. And this is the question I want you to ask. Is well-being a part of our company culture? This is a yes or no question. So the very first thought that came to your mind is probably the true one. Yes or no? Is well-being a part of our company culture? And I want you to write it down. Yes or no? Follow-up question for the pulse survey. If you answered yes, can you think of 2 or 3 pieces of evidence that you could point to that shows that you do have a culture of well-being in your organization? What are those bits of evidence that would be? I want you to write those down. And these would be really cool things for us to share when we get to our discussion portion today. If you answered no, I'm sorry, but I'm also really glad you're here. If you answered no, well-being is not a part of our company culture, I want you to also think, what are 2 or 3 pieces of evidence that support that assessment? This can be a really confronting thing to ask, especially if you're a business owner or if you're in a leadership position. We take responsibility for this, right? But maybe if you're in a larger organization, you feel a little helpless with this. It's easy to feel small and you can't make a difference on this. I'm hoping that through our discussion today, you will walk away with some information, some ideas, some inspiration, and some tools that you can start to have this conversation in your organization, that maybe we can start to move the needle. This is not a quick fix. There's no silver bullet to this. This is a very organic process, but it's one that if we can be a little more aware and a little more intentional, we can make some really, really meaningful change. So these are the things I want to present and share with you today. 5 things every small, we're going to throw into mid-sized business, needs to know about wellness programs in general. Okay, this is something that I've researched over the years as I've entered this space with our business. And I'm excited to share some of these ideas with you and just get you thinking. So again, as I share, write down questions, write down stories, ideas that you want to share with the group that relate to this. So first and foremost, you need to know that there is a growing demand for wellness culture. Okay, and I'm going to kind of use wellness culture and wellness programs somewhat interchangeably. We're going to talk more about why that is. They feed each other, right? It's kind of chicken and egg question. We're not really sure which one comes first. We need both. There is a demand for this. And Deb, I saw you nodding your head. Yes, there is. These are some of the reasons why. I'm not going to read them all to you. You are familiar probably with most of them. One of the biggest reasons is we have a shift happening in the workforce, right? We have this unprecedented 4 generations, 4 very distinct sets of values and experience in our workforce. But now we have baby boomers starting to retire, and our millennials are starting to come more into these leadership positions. And these younger generations have a very different set of values, what's important to them, what they prioritize. And it really is more around this holistic living, this mental health. They want to have work-life balance. They don't want to punch a clock and check boxes. They want purpose. They want meaning in their work. All of this fits together to create a very interesting dynamic in the workforce, that there is a demand to work for a company, to be a part of something that matters, something with a conscience. And a big piece of that is, how do you see and how do you treat your people, right? So if we want to be competitive, if we want to stand out as employers, we need to speak to this. And wellness culture and wellness programs can be one part of that recipe for us. When you look at a company and you get a sense that, oh, they do have this wellness culture, we call it other things too. Maybe there's this people first mentality. There's lots of other things we could call it, but I'm going to call it wellness culture today, of seeing people as people and treating them that way. That is attractive. That is going to help you with retention. That is going to give you grounds to develop and retain top talent that has this new set of values that's coming into the workforce. So that's the first thing we need to understand as leaders, is that there is an increased demand for this. Okay, let's go on to number 2. What the heck is a wellness program? I have 4 pictures here. None of these are wellness programs. Okay, EAP, Employee Assistance Program, fantastic thing to have. Huge proponent, huge supporter of EAPs, but it's not a wellness program. Okay, we have to kind of separate that out. Pizza parties, donut Mondays, super cool. Maybe it's a part of your culture, but that's also not a wellness program. And it's not because it's pizza. It's just, there's more to it. And we need to be a little, and I'm going to get into a definition of why this is, but that's not a wellness program either. Health insurance, this is just pay to play. That's barrier to entry. Like, you just have to provide the basic necessities as an employer, right? Do not think that just because you have really good insurance that you have a wellness program. Okay, be careful of that. And then this this is a picture of, maybe some coworkers saying, oh, how was your weekend? Oh, look at my daughter. Wasn't she so cute in her Halloween costume last night? That's great. Relationships, communication, rapport, all of that's fantastic. Still not a wellness program. Okay. All of these may contribute to your wellness culture, but let's talk about what a wellness program really is. How would we define this? There's a fantastic article that was written in 2020 in Harvard Business Review that offers this definition. I'm going to read it. It's a little wordy, but what I want you to listen for is, what are the ingredients to this recipe? What is a legitimate wellness program? How would we define that? First of all, it's organized. There's some structure to it. It is employer sponsored, okay? And it's designed to support employees, sometimes their families, as they adopt and sustain behaviors that reduce health risks, improve quality of life, enhance personal effectiveness, and benefit the organization's bottom line. That is a corporate wellness program, okay? So it's important to kind of identify, okay, we can now see why maybe those 4 things don't quite fit this definition, right? So we do need to be clear on what this is. Here, this is completely invented by me from my experience in the health and wellness space, and now in the corporate wellness space. I would separate this into 4 categories, that you can have a variety of programs and initiatives that are kind of falling into these 4 different buckets. Educational, we're just giving information. We're making sure that folks are kind of hearing that we're talking about eating healthy, moving more, stressing less or better. We're passing out pamphlets, we're putting posters up. Maybe there's something in our intranet or our emails. It's information. That's great. That does things. Then we've got this behavioral category. So are we actually doing something that's addressing behavior? Coming back to this definition, it's helping them adopt and sustain behaviors that reduce health risks, okay? My company really focuses on this piece, right? I'm a total nerd about behavior change. So education is great, but it only goes so far. We need to be able to translate that into behavior. Experiential programs are fantastic. We have clients that bring meditation teachers and yoga teachers into their space. It's super cool. I know a guy that does corporate forest bathing. These experiential things are fantastic, and they are powerful ways to communicate and influence culture around well-being. And it's just one of 4 categories, right? And then, of course, we've got the environmental pieces, whether you're addressing it, if you have a fully hybrid team, that would be an interesting thing in the chat. If you want to share, are you guys hybrid? Are you fully in, office environment? Do we have any fully hybrid fully remote teams? We work with all sorts of varieties there. So how are you addressing the environment that your employees are working in? And does that support this culture of well-being and wellness? So some things for you to start thinking about, right? Don't look at this and say, oh, well, we have like a little wellness newsletter that we add every single week. That's great. That's one piece of this much larger puzzle. So this can be interesting to look at. So short and simple, my definition of a wellness program, it supports meaningful change. Okay, meaningful change in that personal well-being. The third thing we need to talk about, ROI. People in business love to talk about ROI, but there's this other thing called VOI. Maybe you've heard of it. This is value on investment. Let's talk about return on investment. Both of these are important. Return on investment, when we're talking about wellness programs, if it's a new conversation for you to be bringing to leadership, or for you to be having with yourself, if you're a business leader, first of all, we want to know, like, why would we spend money on this? Are we going to get return on our dollar? And the answer is yes. When you invest in wellness programs, you will get an ROI. It will come from decreased health costs, fewer sick days, increased productivity. yeah, you're going to get that back. Those are dollars back in your pocket. It's tricky with wellness programs because you saw how much variety is possible inside the umbrella of wellness programs. So this can be a really hard thing to nail down as far as how much that ROI is and how quickly you can achieve it. So, you know, we do want to look at this. We want to look at really effective ways to have wellness programs. We have clients, just one recently mentioned to me, well, actually, we came in and we do monthly workshops with some of our folks that do the coaching program. We supplement with other things. And we were in there doing a workshop, getting set up, and I pulled this executive director in the nonprofit that we support. I pulled her aside and I said, you know, I just want to applaud you for doing this every month for your people. It's a small group, it's under 30 employees, but she really values it. And I think her employees can tell that she cares about them because they're investing in this, and it's dollars, right? And this is what she said to me. She's like, yeah, of course we invest in our people. It's important. It's important to do this. So yes, we look at the dollars. Let's look at just general value. It's a little more of this intangible return, but it matters, right? This is where the HR folks really live, right? Is like, how are we doing on culture and morale and retention, right? You guys live in this space. So we recently had a client that just started with us, and this was the reason they came to us. They said, look, they're in the professional services realm, and they're looking at their pipeline of incoming professionals into their space, and it's not looking great. A lot of professions are this way right now, right? It's kind of scary. And they said to me, we need to keep the employees we have. So we're going to do this program because we don't want people to burn themselves out. We want them to have support. So they saw the value of this, of having a wellness program, to say, hey, we need to stand out. We need the folks that are here, we want them to stay. So when we look at ROI versus VOI, we need to look for both. Look for programs that you see that, yes, there's dollar sense and logic here, and there's kind of more of that intangible value that's going to come. So you need to look at both when we make those decisions. All right. How do you know an effective and viable program when you see one? Okay, there's some really great research around this, and I have actually a white paper that I've written on this research, and that's one of the things I would love to share with you at the end of today. And the difference between small business and large corporations is really interesting to look at. I'm going to focus just on what has been shown in the research of what effective and viable program pillars are for small businesses, but know that they are different, which is really interesting to me because corporate wellness has been around for decades, but it's kind of new that we're bringing it to small businesses now. Small businesses are starting to have this conversation where they have not had it before. So if we just try to carbon copy what we see in big corporate, we're going to be sorely disappointed. So let me walk you through this really briefly. And if this strikes your fancy, I've got the research for you. I've packaged it really beautifully, and I'm excited to share it with you. We need to be innovative as we look at putting programs together for small businesses. Every small business is so unique and individual. And so we need to be creative in how we put a program together. So being willing to kind of think outside of the box with these non-traditional approaches. It's really interesting to look at the research that was an emerging theme. Effective and viable programs in small businesses had that creative, non-traditional feeling to them. There was also this idea of constant iteration and refinement, that you can't just like set it and forget it. You can't just partner with us or some other company or some vendor and say, great, we're doing it. We can check the box. No, you need to stay engaged and continually see what's working about this for us, what's not working about this for us. So we got to have that engagement. Internal ideas. This is super important in small businesses. We aren't just cogs in a massive machine, you know, multi-unit corporations, we have more relationships in a different way when we're working in smaller businesses, don't we? So it's really important to honor the fact that people want to have a voice. And that's probably how you've built your business up to this point anyway. So let's honor that as we integrate that into a wellness program. So make sure you're getting some ideas. What are people interested in? What do they want? Respond to that. Aligned technology is a really interesting one. What they saw is, you know, again, this isn't just as simple as like finding a really flashy app or buying everybody Fitbits. We need to use technology wisely and do it if it's being asked for, and if there's alignment there, go for it. But just doing some newfangled app because it looks cool and flashy didn't really land well with some folks. So keep that in mind. And then this idea of just experimentation, kind of having a beginner's mindset as you look at what possible programs you want to put in your business. It's important to see it as an experiment, that we're going to try this for 90 days, or we're going to try this for 6 months or a year, and then we're going to find out what people thought about it. And then all of these kind of fit together. We're going to reiterate, okay? We're going to re-innovate. So having that beginner's mindset, okay? Can you start to see how this really requires involvement and engagement from leaders as well as kind of rank and file, right? Really briefly, these are the things that are unique to large business. We can learn from this, but if we try to carbon copy this over to small business, we're gonna not quite hit the mark. So there's more detail on this in the white paper that I'll share with you. But just know that it's different. It's different for large versus small businesses. Okay, so the way I would sum it up is you got to get creative, definitely be collaborative as you design your programs. And man, as leaders, as HR, as business owners, we have to be engaged and involved. There's also like this element of humility and genuineness. There's such a thing about alignment that if you're bringing a program in and it's just kind of feeling like it's coming out of left field, it may not land very well, right? It has to kind of be a little more of a natural outgrowth of a culture that's already being nurtured. And that's back to our chicken and egg question. So if you ever want to chat with me about this, I could talk all day. It's a fun thing to think about. Let's get to our fifth piece here. So I just want to share with you what the common pitfalls are, because corporate wellness in small business is such a new space to be in. It's a new conversation to be having. There are common pitfalls that we need to watch out for. And they relate to the stuff we've already talked about. If we get overly fixated on the ROI, if you have a leader that is saying, I don't want to do that unless we can find a program that guarantees this amount of, this ratio of return in this amount of time, that conversation might be dead in the water. So really what we can do is balance that with the VOI, right? With that value conversation and the culture. And well, let's think about what message this is sending if we were to bring a program in that people were excited about. So helping leaders kind of shift the conversation can be where you can come in and really be an agent for change and progress here. Uninvolved leadership is a big challenge. If you've got folks that are like, oh, that's cool, you've got that idea, yeah, go ahead and run with it. Yeah, I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. We need to, again, kind of coach and guide and round out this conversation. Again, this is something I'm happy to talk with people about, of how do you have that conversation with someone that's a little resistant, or what we would say is a little old school about wellness in the workplace. There's maybe some development to do there in that conversation first. And then this piece of alignment, again, just if we come out of left field with this, it's not going to land, right? So one of the questions that we ask folks before they start working with our company is we say, how does bringing a wellness program like this into your company, how does it align with your mission, with your goals, with your values as a company? And it's so cool to ask folks that question. And the ones that are ready, that this is appropriate for right now, they can answer that question, no problem. They're like, oh, this is just like, it's just a no-brainer. And they tell me why. Those that kind of hum and haw, they're not really sure why I asked that question. Those are the folks that we usually say, maybe we need to look at some other things first before we're ready. So really looking for that alignment. And sometimes there's things to do to prepare before you put a full program in place. And if there's nothing else you get out of this conversation today, that is what I would like you to go home with, is to recognize, are we ready? Are we not ready? And what are some things we could start to do to kind of prepare for that shift? Okay, so all in all, you've got these 5 things. You're understanding that there's a demand for wellness culture and wellness programs. You're understanding what a wellness program is and what it is not. We don't want to just get into box checking here. We want to really have something that is structured, something that is going to impact meaningful change in individuals and in your organization. And then that purpose comes back to, why are we doing it? If we get too fixated on the ROI and we don't recognize the value of it that is inherent, then we might need to check in on that. And then getting into those pillars, are we going about this in a creative and collaborative and humble way? And then just keeping those pitfalls in mind, okay? So I hope you've written some things down as we've gone through this. Thank you for letting me share and line that out for you. This is what we're talking about, this idea that wellness programs, wellness culture, these fit together, they feed off of each other. And so we get to kind of look at our own organizations and ask, where are we at and how can we start to move the needle in the direction of that wellness culture? That is the goal, okay? Before we get into our discussion, next steps for you with this information is to start having a conversation, okay? I want you to think of someone in your organization that you could, after this presentation today, after this discussion, go back and tell somebody about it, whether that's just a peer or maybe it's a superior, somebody. Maybe you just go home and you tell somebody in your family. I want you to start talking about this, because the more we talk about it, the more things are going to start to shift and grow, okay? Now, I would love to share these slides with you today to help you maybe share this with people in your organization. I would love to share my white paper with you again, so you can have something in hand for maybe those folks that are maybe a little more skeptical about this wellness thing. Would love to share that with you. And we do free strategy sessions. If you just want someone to help facilitate a conversation about wellness culture and wellness programs in general, we love having those conversations. So I would love if you would drop in the chat if you want to share your name, your company, your email. Go ahead, Deborah.
And Danielle, I was going to say, if everybody's registered for the lunch bunch, we've got that information and we actually gave you that spreadsheet. So you should have that information and we have it. So usually we send a follow-up note to everybody who attended and we can send out that information, and you can send out follow-up information post as well. So what we want to do is capture anybody who didn't register like before yesterday, because we both got that spreadsheet. So unless you missed that, I know I got it.
Sounds good. I was out of the office yesterday, but thank you.
Okay, so you have a spreadsheet from Jennifer that has everybody on it. So wonderful. Just FYI.
Perfect. So we will send these things to you. And the goal is that conversation. Let's just get talking about it inside of your organizations. So this is where I want to open it up, my friends. What have some of the ideas, the thoughts, the stories, the experiences you've had around workplace wellness, wellness programs? How do you kind of see the wellness culture in your organization? What are some of your observations that you can share with us so we can kind of learn from each other? I want to use the rest of our time today on that. So unmute yourself if you feel free to just chat with us, or you can use the chat itself. That's great too. got such a great group today. Thank you all for being here.
Ah, Megan, I can see you.
Hi, my name's Megan. I work for a nonprofit called Resource Generation. One of the things we do for employee wellness is we caucus once a month, and we break up by class. So we have wealthy and non-wealthy folks, because people that are, and that's partly based on what we do, but and we talk about the ways that we can support one another and reduce the harmful effects of capitalism within our organization. And I feel like that's been a really good form of workplace wellness, because we learn a lot about one another. And when we break out by, so we break out by wealthy and non-wealthy, and then we have like white wealthy, white non-wealthy, BIPOC wealthy, BIPOC non-wealthy, and non-wealthy. And I think it helps us strategize with ways to talk to other members of the org.
Wow, Megan, that's amazing.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. How long
And
have you been doing that?
Well, the org's been around for 27 years. I know that the caucusing has been going on at least since 2017, which has been very helpful. We've also, you know, in doing those caucuses, things like rapid response stuff comes up where we have immediate needs for the org, especially right now. I mean, we're a small org, we're 22 people, but 11 of those people are Jewish. And so the world right now is it's a very heavy place, but especially heavy for them. And so them saying, you know, us saying, well, what is it that would be supportive? And them saying, I would like, you know, a lot of people live on the East Coast. I would like to have time to be able to go to protests or do that kind of stuff. So coming up with rapid response immediately, you know, and then coming back to our employee meeting, say, hey, this came up in our caucus, has been really helpful for us to be able to meet the needs of employees as they come up, because it's never just like, oh, for this year we're going to have this, right? It's like, this thing is happening right now, and this is how we can be supportive.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. See, boom, like this is why we need to just have these discussions, because I'm sure everybody here is going, that sounds amazing. Or
It's
maybe
hard too, and it's uncomfortable, right? Like looking at privilege and looking at those things is hard, but if we're going to spend all this time in a workplace together anyway, and you know, it's a nonprofit, so it's different than a corporate environment, but it definitely has changed my views on how work can be.
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you for leading out on that by being a part of an organization like that. And thank you for sharing it with us. Oh, that's amazing. You and I are going to chat more. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Anyone else? And I know we have things in the chat, but feel free to just unmute. Deborah, can I depend on you of like, if you want to just pick something out of the chat to read, and we can address it if there's questions?
Yeah. Well, I kind of like Samantha shared with us that she's thinking about this concept of giving people a fixed amount of money, a stipend, that then the employee can use that on anything that supports wellness. So, which I think is fabulous. I'm going to be a little jaded here, so forgive me, is how do we know for sure that they're using that money for the gym membership, or for a bike, or for some kind of, so is it really given to the employee, or they ask for it and the money is sent to the gym or for the bike shop or for something, so that we know for sure it's going towards a wellness program, as opposed to, here's my $300 and I'm paying a utility bill. And I'm not saying that that isn't a need for that individual, but that's not a wellness focus. So that would be my concern in terms of success for a program, is making sure that the money is actually being used in the intention that you have laid out. You might want to have a little bit of control over that, or that they have to submit, they pay first and you submit a receipt and they get reimbursed for the money in that regard. So I don't know if you've had some kind of scenario with Danielle that you've worked with clients on or made recommendations or something along those lines.
Yeah, and Samantha just replied that, yeah, she was thinking more along the lines of reimbursement. Yeah, so submitting a receipt. I think that's smart, and it's not jaded. I mean, this is just, we have to think through these things, right? Yeah, I'm with you, Deborah. And Samantha, I think it's a great idea. I definitely have heard of people doing this and doing it pretty successfully. It just depends on what kind of impact you want it to have, right? As far as, you know, and the impact you want it to have on the change it's going to make in that person's life, the difference it's going to make for them. Then you also want to think of like, what message is this sending, right? And is there, you know, depending on how big that stipend is there something else that would accomplish those two things more effectively, right? Could we affect more change, progress, support in those health outcomes for that person in another way? And or could we send the message even louder and clearer if there was another way? You know, I think the appeal of something like this is that it's highly individualized, right? That's a fantastic thing about it, is that people get to self-select and self-choose. And you are going to have some people be like all over it, and you're going to have others that are just like, meh, like they won't take you up on it. And that's fine. I've got news for you. That's the way all wellness programs are, right? You're not going to have 100% takers across the board. But, you know, one of the things that I talk about a lot with the folks we consult with on wellness programs is this idea of multiple access points. And you want to have things in place that is going to go deep and make like really significant change for people. And you want things kind of around the periphery that everyone has access to and more people will engage with, like these workshops, for example. Like pretty much everybody is there because we're showing up in their space, but it's more surface level. The benefit of it is that we're sending the message, right? We're reinforcing that wellness culture of like, hey, we are an employer that looks at you as a person and we want to support you as a person. Yeah, so it's an interesting idea. So maybe some food for thought, some questions for you there, but thank you for sharing, Samantha. Appreciate it.
You know, if you have educational components, the $300 might be like if you did things in tiers. So tier 1 or quarter 1, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Quarter 2, we're going to do A, B, and C. But quarter 3, then we're giving you money to implement and do things that you would like to do. Or because $300 is enough to maybe offer something to somebody that they wouldn't otherwise do because they don't have enough money to do it. It might be the thing that gets you the opportunity to embark on something that you didn't feel like you could do. Those quarter 1 and quarter 2, you're giving them some suggestions, because sometimes people are like, what would I do?
Yeah.
But if you've been dropping ideas and some suggestions, and or part of the deal is come back and tell us, show us, put something together in a fun way, like how did you spend the money? How did you use your dollars? And it doesn't have to be all 300 at one time. Maybe I dropped 100 here and 50 there. But if there's a little bit of a fun accountability, like I bought the bike and then there's a picture of me in Shampooey Park doing a bike ride, then there's something that goes along with it. So it's not just the item, there's also a story. So there's a story value that goes back to your VOI concept.
Yeah. And like, if we just sat here and just like brainstormed with each other, it would be so fun. Like, can we have a follow-up session and just like, let's just brainstorm things. And it's going to look different in every organization. And you want that alignment with your culture. And there's little nudges you can make of like, our culture is here. And here's just a tiny little side step that we could kind of maybe feed off. You know, there's a little branch here. It's fun. It's a fun thing to brainstorm on. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and I like Jessica's question. Jessica works in a high stress environment with a 911 dispatch center.
Mm.
So she sees a big need for kind of the personalization component, but let's make no mistake about it. We're talking about people who find themselves, 24/7 taking on, and in some respects, the need to be able to learn how to separate work and personal so that you're not taking that home. And there's going to be success days, success moments, and some that aren't. And so, stress is the norm. So might you have some ideas or suggestions and wellness ideas, let alone even program? Because Jessica, not knowing what you might have, I'm assuming you might have, I shouldn't assume anything, but boy, you definitely need an EAP program. And I know that is not make up a wellness program, but that is a bare necessity in something that you have. But then being able to build off of that. Okay, so we only have an EAP.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, this would be a great conversation, Jessica. I could totally dive into this. To just do it briefly, I think, first of all, it's just really powerful that you're acknowledging stress is our norm. What do we do with that, right? That's step one with your conversation. Having the EAP in place is fantastic. Sometimes when we consult with folks, we're just saying, okay, what do you already have? And how can you talk about it more? How can you start creating a culture around the utilization? And of course, we want to address, confidentiality and all of that, but there are things we can do, especially around communication. Deborah, you mentioned that just the power of a story, right? Those that are comfortable sharing, to destigmatize and normalize, like, I love our EAP, I love my therapist, to say this, the work we do is heavy. Are we acknowledging that fact? We work with some organizations that are very open-minded and talking a lot about vicarious trauma. I think that is such a powerful thing to really plug into. And, so hopefully that's a space you've already explored. If not, that would maybe be another route. Yes.
Well, I think it's important to think about and maybe even ask people one-on-one. So from a supervisory standpoint, talking to our people about having one-on-one conversations. How are you dealing with stress? How have you? Maybe even from an interviewing standpoint, depending on where they've come from, like when you're finding yourself in stressful situations or dealing with stress, how have you, in hopefully healthy ways, dealt with stress? Do they have mechanisms, thought processes around doing that already versus constant education and use of? Because the EAP isn't just for clarity's sake, and hopefully answering Carla's question, EAP isn't just about I've got challenges and I'm going to go to them. EAPs also will come in and you're actually paying for some of those services. So they have like brown bag lunches, they'll bring people in and do programming for you, oftentimes at no cost. So explore with your EAP provider, what services do they have? There's often websites that are associated with the services, things for employees, things for supervisors. So what other support kinds of things besides, quote, calling and meeting with someone, visiting with someone kind of support do they offer? Because much of that might not come at any cost at all and can be supportive to the employee, can be personalized one-on-one, resources they can get, quote, on their own, read, maybe even videos that they can watch. So there's some different levels and elements to that, but being able to think about how are they healthily handling stress now, because there's meditation, there's deep breathing, there's things like that that can be techniques and things that people can learn and do on their own. Being able to go for walk and talks, just go for walks around the building. Do we have coverage? Do we have opportunities? So there's all kinds of things like that can be things that we can bring in and some healthy techniques that you can do on the job, around the job, to aid in, and let alone, do you know your body when you're starting to feel stressed to be able to kind of handle some of that? Because if you aren't even in tune to that, let's talk again about a few basics.
Yeah, Deborah, yes to everything there. And it kind of goes back to that idea of like, are you fully utilizing what you already have at your disposal? And when we talk about like prepping the ground for an actual wellness program, I think step one is to just look at what you already have, like an EAP, and reaching out and what's available, what are we not utilizing as a group, what resources can we have brought in. So powerful. I think that's a great suggestion. So
well, and some EAPs, you don't have to have an EAP, Carla. They'll do one-offs, so you can contact them maybe through your health benefits. If you have health benefits, there's some support services there. So take a look at what all is being offered to support that. A lot of times our health care benefits are much more robust than they were in the old days. So I think some of your wellness options, some of the wellness features, some supplemental things to do value add around our health benefits are there. While it may not be our truest wellness components, some life balance elements, sports tickets, movie things, other outside activities, physical kinds of activities often are being offered at discounted pricing and whatnot through our health benefits programs, depending on who and where and what. So if you don't know about that, go and take a second look and delve a little bit deeper just to make sure you know what's all included, on the off chance that there's more there and we've missed something. So that's an opportunity too.
Absolutely. We've got 5 minutes to the top of the hour. I think if you have more questions, you want to brainstorm more, I would love to share this last slide with you, my contact information. I just love talking about this stuff. So send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. Deborah, you're an amazing resource, and thank you for creating this space for us today. Is there anything that you want to do or say as we wrap up?
Well, there's probably all kinds of things, but you know what? I'm looking right there at that picture, Danielle. See, I think that's another component that we might not always think about, is just our current space.
Yeah.
What does your space offer in terms of, we were talking in our office the other day, someone made a comment and I was like, are we thinking about doing that? Which was taking our old, and forgive me for any of you who are like top of the line into technology and you're in the cloud and blah, 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 blah. We still have a piece of our process that's in us that uses a server. And we're moving away from that. And we're on the last leg. And so we have this space that has a server in it. Several years ago, we used to have a health room, and we had a cot in there, and we had blankets and pillows and music and candles, and people could go in there when they had headaches and just needed a timeout. It was wonderful. I miss that space. Now, it was not pretty like this with plants and, lots of light and stuff like that. But if you weren't feeling well and you just needed to lie down and needed a timeout, wow. So that's the kind of thing that, do we have spaces to be able to do that? And some of us have gotten much smaller in our spaces since the pandemic. We're reusing space differently. So, and I get that. And some of us are working remotely. But what does that look like? What does that feel like? Is that an option in terms of reinforcing the culture, the mindset of our worker bees? So I just think that when I think wellness, it is so comprehensive. Some people are like, ooh, I need a massage. Well, you know what? 911, bring somebody in for some massages, right?
Yeah.
You can do that. How about some timeout space? How about being able to play? Is there places where we can have nice, easy playing music? Not that interferes with our work and the phone calls, but maybe in the lunchroom. That is just, I mean, being able to put it all out on the table. Go to the employees and ask, what would they like? What would make sense for them? Because sometimes it's just about having the ability to recharge a little bit, even for 5 or 10 minutes. And sometimes people really don't think about some things, and we just need to hear ideas from others, things that they do. I've even seen somebody give people kind of a, for lack of better words, a basket, and it was like a weighted blanket. It was a hydration kit. It was puzzles and coloring books, things that just give people an opportunity to reset and recharge, let alone a place to go lie down, even on the ground, on the carpet in the office, to feel and be mindful and be present, to recharge their brain, because they need an adult timeout for 10 minutes.
Yes.
There's just so much that we can do that we don't necessarily always associate with I'm at the office or I'm at work. And yet we can, to help us be better, whole, well, because you're right. A lot of people went for giving up the donuts. It's like, yes, and
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah. And this is just the beginning. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, go have a conversation, go share some ideas, go ask questions, and just start having this conversation in our teams and in our workplaces. Deborah, thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute joy. I look forward to connecting with everybody that's been here today. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Danielle. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you joining us. Again, we'll be able to give you a note out that the recording is available for you. In addition to that, we can make those other resources available to you as well. And next month, for Lunch Bunch will be the first Wednesday of every month is when we meet at noon in December. We're going to have a fabulous, I don't know if it's fabulous, but we're going to have a conversation around 401ks, talk about financial wellness. How about that? And we've got a gentleman by the name of Keith Mayfield who's going to join us for the conversation, and just kind of like, what are we doing? How are we doing it? There's some new things that are coming up to be able to help our employees on that side of the equation. And from an employer standpoint, you know, fiduciary responsibility, but also thinking about how can we really make that benefit a good benefit from an employer and an employee standpoint. So look for that information coming your direction as well. So thanks to all of you for being part of this. I really appreciate it. Lunch Bunch is one of the fun things that HR Answers gets to do, and it's my pleasure to have you all here. Thanks again, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Miss Danielle. Bye, everybody.